You watched it happen to someone else. You saw the LinkedIn post. Excited to share my next chapter. The conspicuously vague language. The 100 reactions from people who all secretly felt a cold flash of recognition. And you thought, glad it wasn't me. Then, one Tuesday, it was you. Not a dramatic firing, not a scene, just a calendar invite from HR with no subject line. A rehearsed face, the phrase, restructuring, which is just the corporate word for the math stopped including you, and a box. Somehow, there's always a box. The keycard doesn't work on the way out. It's a small detail, an almost funny detail. But it lands like a verdict. Here's the thing nobody tells you while it's happening. Getting laid off isn't a financial event. Not really. Not at first. First, it's an identity amputation. Because somewhere between your first performance review and your 4th year a birthday cake in the break room, you stopped having a job and started being one. Your title became your answer to who are you? Your office became proof that you were serious. Your salary became the number you used to measure your own value. And now, the number is 0. So of course, it feels like destruction. It's supposed to. First, the collapse, not the financial one. That comes later. The first collapse is the routine, the alarm, the commute, the meetings that could have been emails that gave your Tuesday a shape. People underestimate routine. It isn't just habit. It's the scaffolding holding the self together. Remove it suddenly, and you feel the draft. The character doom-scrolling at 11 a.m. on a Wednesday isn't lazy. He's disoriented. He built his entire nervous system around a schedule someone else designed. And now the designer left the building without leaving instructions. The job wasn't just income, it was a clock, a social membership, a healthcare plan, a story he told himself about who he was becoming. Gone, in a calendar invite, with no subject line. Then, the math. Here's the part that should genuinely stop you. He earned a real salary, for real years, and owned almost nothing. The apartment, rented. The car, financed. The furniture, credit. The lifestyle, entirely dependent on a direct deposit arriving every other Friday from an institution that just proved, clearly, it was optimizing for something other than his well-being. One missed paycheck. That's the actual margin. Not because he was irresponsible, because the system is designed to consume income faster than it arrives. Rent increases. Subscriptions multiply. Lifestyle quietly inflates to match the number on the offer letter. And suddenly, the bigger salary has the exact same psychological texture as the smaller one, just with a nicer gym membership he barely uses. The layoff didn't create the fragility, it just turned on the lights. Then comes the job search, and the job search is its own education. Applications fired into algorithmic voids. Automated rejections arriving faster than humanly possible, which means, correctly, that no human was involved. Recruiters requesting 5 to 7 years of experience for roles that didn't exist 5 years ago. Interviewers asking where he sees himself in 5 years. as if the company asking is planning to exist that long. His former boss posts about company culture on LinkedIn, uses the word family. And here's where the story turns. Because the search fails, over and over, for weeks. And in the failure, something uncomfortable happens. He has time. Real time. Unscheduled, unowned, unmonitored time. The kind he used to fantasize about on Sunday nights and immediately waste the moment he had it. And this time, maybe because desperation cleared the fog, he actually looks around. The internet is full of people making money without asking anyone for permission. Not lottery winners. Not geniuses. Ordinary people with specific skills and an internet connection, who figured out that distribution no longer requires a corporation as a middleman. A designer selling templates. A developer freelancing across 3 continents. A person who learned one narrow thing deeply and taught it to strangers who paid for it. The narrator doesn't romanticize this. It's not magic. It's just different math. The employee model: trade hours, receive salary, repeat until restructuring. The ownership model: build something once, distribute it indefinitely, get paid while you sleep. Which is, admittedly, a little unfair. But also just how leverage works. And then, the mindset crack. He starts freelancing to survive. Emergency income. Pure panic money. But something happens the first time a client pays him directly. The number is smaller than his old paycheck, but it feels different. Heavier. More real. Salary money arrived on autopilot. Same date, same amount. Controlled entirely by someone else's accounting schedule. This money came because he created something, delivered it, and someone decided it was worth paying for. The connection between effort and outcome was visible for the first time. Jobs train people to eliminate uncertainty. Show up, get paid. Repeat. The unpredictability is managed away, which feels like safety, until you realize someone else is managing it. And managed means controlled. Ownership is uncomfortable in a different way. The income fluctuates. The schedule is self-imposed. Nobody is watching. Nobody is coming to tell you what to do next. That's the terrifying part. That's also the point. Then, leverage. One digital product sells at 3 a.m. No additional effort required. One referral from one satisfied client generates 3 more clients. One piece of content made once keeps finding new audiences without his involvement. The math looks nothing like employment math. Employment math is linear. 1 hour times $1 rate equals 1 outcome. Repeat until retirement. Leverage math is different. Sometimes exponential. Sometimes embarrassingly disproportionate. 1 unit of effort multiplied by distribution can reach 1,000 people instead of 1. The internet didn't just change communication. It changed the economics of individual output. A person with skills, a laptop, and an audience can operate like a business that used to require 20 people to run. He didn't know this was possible. Nobody mentioned it at work. Fear stays, though, even after the income stabilizes, even after the independent number exceeds the old salary number. The anxiety doesn't leave quietly, because the conditioning is deep. Years of reliable Friday deposits built a nervous system that interprets certainty as safety, even when that certainty was entirely controlled by an institution that eliminated him in a meeting that lasted 11 minutes. The company had total authority over his financial future for years. It exercised that authority instantly. And somehow, the paycheck still felt more stable than owning his own income. That's the real trap. Dependence wearing a safety vest. Fragility dressed like structure. Then, the lifestyle math. Employed, he spent to compensate. Delivery food, because cooking required energy he didn't have after spending it all at the office. Expensive coffee because the commute was long. Stress purchases. Status purchases. The $10 transaction that felt like a small act of control in a life that didn't feel very controllable. Consumption as emotional regulation. Lifestyle inflation as a reward system that quietly consumed every raise before it could become anything. Unemployed, with expenses suddenly existential, he cut and discovered something strange. The things that stayed weren't the expensive things. They were the ones that actually mattered. Fewer transactions, sharper math. For the first time in years, spending reflected values instead of anxiety. He was earning less, but keeping more, because the entire architecture of his consumption had been built around a job that was gone. The climax. 12 months later, the man who got walked out with a box earns more than the manager who stayed. Not through one windfall, through multiple small streams that don't require him to be in a specific chair at a specific time to keep moving. The manager is in traffic before sunrise. He's deciding what the morning looks like. The script doesn't pretend this was easy. It wasn't. It was frightening and inconsistent, and frequently humiliating in different ways than employment was humiliating. But the nature of what was being built was different. Not income. Autonomy. Not a higher salary. Control over direction. Those are not the same thing. And most people never find out, because the system works hard to make sure they don't have to. Then, the bigger picture. Layoffs aren't personal failures. They are structural features. They are the moment the corporation's math updates and the human variable gets removed. That's not malice. It's optimization. For shareholders, for margins, for a quarterly number that has nothing to do with the person who spent years showing up. And at the exact same time, technology has quietly made individual economic independence more possible than it has ever been. The barriers between skill and income have never been lower. Distribution that used to require institutional infrastructure now requires a laptop and something useful to say. The same economy creating instability is creating the conditions for people willing to look at it clearly. That's the contradiction at the center of everything. The closing line lands slowly. He thought losing his job was the worst thing that happened to him that year. It was the first time in years that he was actually building something that couldn't hand him a box. The real ladder isn't the promotion track. Here's the actual one. Level 1. Panic. Every dollar already spent before it arrives. Survival is the whole strategy. Level 2. Stability. The floor stops shaking. There's a small cushion. Anxiety becomes background noise instead of jet weather. Level 3. Employment comfort. Good income. Good lifestyle. Still trading hours. Still taxed as a worker. The ceiling becomes faintly visible through the fluorescent lights. Level 4. Independent income. One stream that isn't directly connected to showing up somewhere. A freelance client. A product. Something generating without requiring your presence every moment. Level 5. Leverage and systems. Multiple streams. Income while sleeping. Time fully owned. This is the level most people never discover because nobody talks about it in performance reviews. The people who get there fastest aren't always the hardest workers. They're the ones who stopped asking permission from institutions that were never planning to protect them anyway. A stable job isn't stable if someone else can end it in a calendar invite. Autonomy isn't a luxury. It's the only kind of security that actually belongs to you.